thing that's very difficult is that when we're dealing with quantum physics, we're not dealing with reality in terms of objects. We're dealing with reality in terms of fields of possibility. And these are very different from objects. An electron field of possibility is everywhere. It's not just at one point. It may pop into existence at one point and then pop out of existence at one point, and then pop in at another point and pop out. In fact, they can do that continuously all over the place and produce a cloud. But it's not a particle, it's a field of possibility. So we're dealing with the mathematical structure of that field, this so-called quantum field. And when we look at that, we're looking at what does that field interact with? And we know that it could interact with another electron field, producing, let's say, 2 electrons. It can interact with light, which we call, that's really what quantum electrodynamics is all about, is the interaction of electrons with light. That's another. When we're talking about the nucleus, we're talking about quarks interacting with gluons, which is a kind of heavy light. What describes it? And the gluon field is inside of the nucleus of an atom, which is we're at a very tiny time and space scale when we're talking about this kind of stuff. The fact is we have a theory for it, and it's pretty good. It's called the standard theory. It works pretty well. Doesn't explain everything very well, but it works fairly well. We've been able to make predictions about the existence of other structures, and now we're looking for something called the God particle. It's named after a physicist whose name is Higgs, and it's called a Higgs boson. It's a small, very small particle, which we believe is the kernel or seed particle out of which every particle comes into existence, with all the different masses that particles have. And these little seed particles have almost no mass at all. So we're looking at something being created out of fields, which are not things themselves. And we're beginning to look at, it may be that what is making the thing appear is not necessary at this level, which is a very tiny space and time scale. What's making the thing appear is not other things, but information that is somehow captured. And one idea that people are playing with right now is that information gets captured on the surface of black holes. And there may be minute black holes where this surface information is captured. And this information gets projected out into the universe and forms little pockets by which gluon fields coalesce to produce particles of matter. This stuff is so fantastic.
This is fascinating, as you say, as you go deeper into the physical reality, more and more there's no thing there, but that doesn't mean to say there's nothing there. You know, what we find is an atom doesn't actually exist, it's elementary particles. Those elementary particles are actually potentials for existence. And so there's no thing there in terms of what we normally think of as things, and that's why I say the physical reality is very different from what appears in the mind. So what appears in the mind is very much things, or we think in terms of particles and those sorts of things. What is actually in the physical reality turns out to be nothing like we imagine it to be. But I believe there is a physical reality. The word thing doesn't apply to it. There is no thingness to it, but there is a physical reality, and that physical reality interacts with us in such a way that I create this experience full of the thinginess and the colors and all of that.
If we take a step back and look at our three-dimensional reality, how do we know that's all there is? I've read about mathematicians who have mathematical proofs who make a strong case for there being at least 11 different spatial dimensions. If this is the case, why do we seem to only operate in 3 dimensions? Could it be that there are things going on all around us that never enters into our 3-dimensional awareness? For example, if I were to insert my arm into a 4th spatial dimension and say, "Hey, look over there, can you see that?" You probably wouldn't be able to see where my arm went because currently your awareness only includes 3 dimensions.